let's go ahead and dive right into it. If you could share with us your background, your graduate studies.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, undergrad, I went to UC Santa Cruz up north in Cali, and but the Bay Area doesn't claim them because they're off in the forest somewhere. And grad school, I went to the Actor Studio Drama School in New York, and I got my master's in fine arts. I was in the acting track. We had an acting, playwright, and directing track, and I was in the acting track, and that was in 2005 now.
What was it? Thank you for sharing. And now, look, I know we do this often, and I'm always bragging about you, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it up. Can you share with us about your Lion King experience?
Okay, yes. So when I was 12 years old, I was a child actor, so it was just a normal audition. And it was called The King of the Jungle at the time. And I got a call back a year later. And a year later, they said you had to call back for Lion King. And I still didn't know, like, the magnitude of what it was. It was just like, okay, another job I booked. And I went to Buena Vista Studios, which is Disney Studios out here in the Valley. And when I came to the security guard, I was like, yes, I'm here for Lion King. They're like, oh, park here, park here. And me and my mom were like, what's the big deal? And when we were going, James Earl Jones was leaving his session when I was coming to my session. And it wasn't really until the premiere that I realized the magnitude of what I had just did as a 12-year-old. And it came out 2 years later in 94. So I was 14 when The Lion King came out. So I was the voice of young Nala, the little girl cub. And it was a different voice when it was a different voice for adult Nala. Maury Kelly, she's a actress. She mostly has movies like in the 90s. Yeah, so they're coming out with a new live action one in July. So it'll be interesting to see it in this new form. Like they've done, I think, Jungle Book and Beauty and the Beast already, live action.
And feel free to share with us, I would call it the business of acting and the industry.
Right. So in terms of where do you want me to start? Like auditions?
Cast, like going from the audition to actually preparing for the role, going onto the set, and moving from the enjoyment of being cast to now let's get the job done.
Right. Okay, so I guess I'll talk about my last TV experience was NBC, a show called Timeless. It's kind of a mix between like a history show mixed with sci-fi because they go back in time. They jump back and forth in time. So that audition, you get a breakdown from your agent, or if you're submitting yourself, a breakdown. And all it said was like her name, and it said that she has a brother and that she's the owner of a juke joint, and that's pretty much it. So because I already knew the show, I asked my agent what time period is it in, because I knew most of the guest stars are going to be in whatever time period they're jumping to. So she said it was going to be in the 40s. So I looked up 40s fashion, 40s hairstyles with like African Americans, so that when I went into the audition, I would look authentic. So I put my hair in like a 40s hairstyle, and I found an outfit in my closet that could kind of look like 40s. I mean, it wasn't like going out and buying a costume. It was just giving the essence of. And it was only 2 or 3 lines, so of course I memorized it, and I went in. And in terms of, I think what got me the role, besides looking like the part, having a character, so I had like a slight drawl in my voice, not necessarily like a southern accent. I just had a drawl. So it was like a slower, kind of slangy kind of speech that was reminiscent of the 40s films that I had seen. And I placed the person I was talking to, which was the casting director, on one side of the camera, who I was looking at. And then for the part where I was looking for someone, I placed them on the other side of the camera. So when I'm talking to the casting director, who is the person I'm talking to. And then when I had to talk to someone else, instead of just looking at her, I looked at the other side of the film. So the people looking at the film, it was like, oh, like it looks like I'm talking to different people, and made it more three-dimensional. So then I booked the role, and usually with a under 5 or like guest star, what you audition with is pretty much what you're probably going to be doing on set. So I kept those lines memorized. They might throw something else at you, or it'll probably just be what you audition with. So I had fittings, which is maybe 2 weeks or a week before you're going to be on set. And then I arrived on set, I think a week after that. And all throughout this, the stage manager and the assistant director are sending me updates on the shooting schedule. So I got my shooting schedule for the whole week. And of course, it might change day to day based on what they shot. But my times were early calls, like 4 a.m. calls. So you get to set. So I got to Paramount Studios. The assistant director checked me in, took me to my trailer. That was cool. I had a little trailer. And then I went to hair and makeup. And then you have a rehearsal with the cameras and the director. So you're on set, the director's kind of walking you through your blocking, mainly just so the cameras can see what they have to do. And then you come back later on. It's usually a waiting game. We say hurry up and wait. And then when you get called in, you're expected to kind of do what you did in that audition room that made you get the part. In terms of Lion King for voiceover, it's a little different. It's not like you're looking at a screen and you're just like giving your voice to what you see. A lot of the animation hadn't even been drawn yet. So they just told us the essence of the scene, and we had to give that energy based on what they told us. And we were kids. I don't think they do this, like say for instance, The Simpsons, they do it all in one studio together like a play. But this, and for the feature film, we took each line and said it 3 different ways based on what they said the scene was about. And we did that for every single line throughout my portion of the film, which is the first half of the film. And that took about 2 to 3 weeks to record.
Now, I like to believe that the best actors come from the stage. Can you share with us your theatrical experience? Like which play you believe you had the most growth as an actress from a theatrical experience?
Well, I think 2 pieces. One was I did a production of The Color Purple, and the reason why I say that had the most impact because all the elements were on point. So sometimes you're not blessed for all the elements to be on point. The casting was on point. The director was on point. The stage managers, the tech crew, like the whole experience, the choreographer, everybody was on point, which made the production just super high quality and definitely a worthwhile experience that I'll never forget. They took their time with casting. Some people say 90% of directing is casting, because when you cast correctly, it makes your job a lot easier. So they really took their time. I feel like they took a month. It was a long time between audition and finding out if I booked it or not. And then we got about two months to rehearse, which is kind of unheard of because I did a production of Amos Behaving and we had 10 rehearsals and we had to put it up. So it was cool to have that much rehearsal time before it. And then just being on stage, it's an immediate conversation with the audience. It's in the moment. It's moment to moment, reacting to your partner, which is very different than on film where you're yelling cut if you mess up, or, they're doing different angles, so you're having to repeat the same thing over and over again within one scene. So I think you really have to have your chops up for theater, because there is no yelling cut. Like, you mess up, you got to keep it moving and hope that your scene partner is going to help you be a support system for you and help each other out throughout the entire piece. But definitely Color Purple. And then I just recently last year did a production called This Land, and that was just a straight play, which I hadn't done in a while because I've been doing musicals. So that was cool to kind of go back to just a straight play, which is my foundation.
Now, did you do the singing in The Lion King? I'm just curious because you mentioned that you do musicals. Did you do the singing in The Lion King?
Well,
so
so Lion King had a completely different singing cast. The only person who did the speaking and singing was Scar, Jeremy Irons. He's the only one who sang and acted. For us, they did record me singing, but I think that was to audition people who sound most like my voice.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So in our class, we have a framework that we couple with the curriculum of, I call it the ABC framework. A stands for affirming the identity. B stands for building the community. C is cultivating leaders. And D is demonstrating to the next generation. Can you share with us through your activism how you build the community, not only on a community-based level, but also on a nationwide as it relates to Washington, D.C., and everything that you're doing to build awareness about diabetes?
Okay. So, yeah, I'm a project ambassador at the American Diabetes Association, and I'm going at the end of March to what they call to Congress, which is in Washington, D.C., and it's a 3-day event. The first day is just like a full day of training, and in terms of coalition building and community building, there are advocates from each state in the U.S., so it's a huge event. Usually California is one of the bigger groups because we're just such a big state. So there's community within our own state, but then there's the national community in that we're all advocating for the same thing. So the first day is pretty much talking about testimonies, talking about the different asks that we want to ask Congress and we want to ask our senators. And then talking about who we're going to actually meet on the day, the different departments we're going to be going to, and how each group is going to, like, one person tell a testimony, one person do the ask, one person talk about the research and whatever else that ADA wants us to talk about. And then the next day is all day on the Hill. So from 8 to like 5, we're just like pounding the pavement. We break up into our different states and our different representatives, and then we come together for the senator, because that's the big group. So all of California comes together for that. And there's hearings throughout the day. They've added NFL players who have type 1 or type 2. They've added researchers, which is a really cool thing to have in our group when we go to talk to the people. To have an NFL player and to have a research-based person, it just gives weight to what we're asking for. And then when we come back home, that's when a lot of the community building continues, because then we go into our prospective communities. Like, I've gone to senior citizen homes talking about how to advocate for yourself when you go to the doctor in terms of diabetes. And they have different concerns, like some of the senior citizen homes where they have where they get fed. So they're not necessarily going out to eat every day. So they were saying, how can we advocate for healthy meals when, you know, we're going to this cafeteria where we got to just eat what they make or whatever. And then you go to like college and young adults, they have different things like, oh, can I get extra time when I'm taking my test in case my blood sugar goes down? And then you get the young adults, we have different concerns like, okay, I have type 1 diabetes. What does that look like when I'm trying to get pregnant? So every level has its own concerns, but the through line is the disease that we're living with, and we're all working towards having a cure so those who come after us don't have to deal with what we deal with on a daily basis.
That is extraordinary. Everyone clap it, clap it, clap it. Okay, at this time I would like to turn it over to Q&A and have the students ask you some questions here. All right, so let's go ahead and start the questioning. Okay, please. Okay, let's go here, then here. Okay.
Okay.
How you doing, Miss Calame-Harris? Name is James. I have both questions or just one?
Just ask one question.
Okay. So, after The Lion King, how did you initially handle the fame?
How did I what?
How did you handle the fame?
Okay. Well, so That was my first red carpet ever, and I was like 14. It was a little daunting at first, because you're going down the red carpet and you have a assigned person like telling you which cameras to go to in terms of interviews on the carpet. But then you also have fans of the film behind the camera people who are trying to get their interviews, and everyone's like yelling your name, and you're trying to be accommodating, but you're also like getting moved along down the carpet. So it's interesting when people are on like TMZ or something like that and they're getting annoyed with the cameras and stuff. I'm like, oh, I felt that, so I understand. But on the outside looking in, it looks like, oh, they're being standoffish, or you know, the people who don't want their kids involved, so they're like, get away. It kind of comes with the territory, so it's part of the job. But I think there's respectful ways to be accommodating and also have your personal space. And also, some of those people, they want to be seen, so they're at every party, and they're calling paparazzi to come because they're going to eat at this certain hot spot. So you see those who are like all in it, and then they complain about it. And then you see people who just, it's their job, so they go to the set, do their job, record the movie, record the film, whatever, and then they go home like a normal job. So I think it's just how you want to navigate it. I think it is possible, unless you're like Michael Jackson or something, to like go to work, go home, and kind of live a normal life, but it's kind of heightened because everything's being seen by everybody. But now even people who are not famous are getting to see that with social media. Now you have like influencers who are like getting followed around in the street versus just movie stars.
Okay. All right. Okay, Ron. Okay.
Were there any projects that you heard about that you spent an extraordinary amount of effort to get onto?
Oh, yes. I did a production of Ain't Misbehavin', which is also a period piece. It's in the, I want to say 30s, 40s jazz, which harmonies are in that period are really crazy. I think they were all on something when they were writing this music. And that's the one I was talking about where we only had 10 rehearsals. So not only is the music super complicated, harmony super crazy, blocking, full-on choreography, all in 10 days. So I was really tested with the chops that I have, but having to tell myself I have the chops to do this constantly every day with each new challenge that I faced. And then as a cast, we came together and kind of, moaned and vented about the short amount of time, but kind of pumping each other up to say we got this, and did some outside kind of rehearsals with each other and bonding so that friendship and bond can seem organic on stage for the audience. So I think it's kind of a mental thing when you're faced with challenges. One, that you were hired for a reason, so it's not like you accidentally got there. They saw something in you and believed that you could do it. So sometimes when you're in those kind of situations, you have to remind yourself, okay, I can do this. I have everything I need. I just have to, apply myself, time management, and just really be on top of everything. So that by the time we get to like tech week and all that kind of stuff, I'm not doing work. I'm just having fun and exploring the character even more versus remembering my lines or something like that.
Another question, John?
What is the best small nuance or side benefit of your job? So not like the best like single thing, but like the best like really small thing that you appreciate on like a daily basis.
Well, I think legacy in terms of Lion King, as I get older, I appreciate it more than when I was younger. When I was younger, it's like, oh, this is just another job. As I get older and I have people calling me saying that, their parent died around the time of Lion King, so it's just a cartoon, but somehow it was like their therapy because they lost their father. Little things like that when you're just doing your job, but you don't realize the impact it has. And then every now and then I'll get like fan mail when I myself am feeling down, because this business is a roller coaster. So you're working sometimes and then you're not working sometimes. And in the times when you're not working, sometimes it can work on your emotions. And it seems like every now and then when I get into those kind of moods, it's so weird. Like God will send like a little fan mail saying, oh, I'm so proud of all that you're doing. I loved young Nala, and I've been keeping up with you and seeing all that you're doing. So little things like that when you're just making impact and not even realizing the impact you're making are the things that get me by.
Wait, another question? Two more questions. Two more. Okay, is it?
What was your favorite moment of doing a voiceover for Young Nala?
My favorite part. Okay, so there's a part. It's not my favorite, but it's funny. There's a part when they're in the elephant graveyard, and they're running from the hyenas, and they're going down this bony like elephant, and I forgot how to scream when I was recording. Like I forgot how to scream. Like usually, like if you're on a roller coaster or something with females, it's usually like this high pitched just sigh. And it was not coming out. So in the movie, when they're going down the thing, I'm like, ah! It's like the fakest scream ever, and that's what's ended up in the movie. So every time I see that part, I cringe even to this day.
Right. Okay, please share.
Hi. Hey, my name is Nala too. So I was just like, that's really cool.
What?
Yeah, I got that from the movie and everything. But I know that you do activism for diabetes. Do you do any other type of activism?
Well, I am a founder of 412 Studios, which is an impact documentary company. So that's like my behind the scenes philanthropy or giving back. Right now we're working on a film called The Faith to Fight, and it's surrounding this lady who was a preacher kid gone wild. She ended up getting in the drug game, and then her family and kids started following her footsteps. And one of her kids on their very first drug run got arrested. Very first, so no history of doing anything bad. Their first run got arrested and was up for life. And she made a promise to God. She said, if you get my son off of this, I will dedicate my life to keeping kids off the streets. Long story short, he only served 2 years, and she's been working in this Boxing for Christ program that she started ever since. And totally flipped her life upside down, but to keep this promise to keep kids off the streets, where she's only charging like $20, and she's coming up with all the equipment from different people trying to take money from her, to her like being a cancer survivor. So it's just all these adversities that she's going through and keeping up. So in telling this story, it's going to put eyes on her program and hopefully bring funding and things to her program for the impact that she's doing. So it's documentary work, but it's also impactful work, because when eyes get on the stories that we're telling, hopefully that will have a strong impact on what they're trying to do in their community.
Well said. Well said. All right. Yeah, let's clap it. All right. Let me take one more question. I know you're on the precipice of asking it. Go ahead. One more question. Hey, don't embarrass me. Okay, thank you.
So, it says that you're a professor, right? What are the steps you had to take besides being an actress to become, a teacher? Like, how did you know, like, besides being an actress, you wanted to be an educator?
Okay. Well, my side gigs have always been in education. I come from a line of educators. My mom was in education and administrator for her whole career. My grandmother was an educator. So I kind of fell into educating. But for being a professor, I have my master's of fine arts, so that was a prerequisite for teaching community college and for teaching at university. And then I always am a fan of any kind of internships or things like that that get you into that environment that you're trying to be in. So I did a thing called Project Match, which is an internship for up and coming professors. So it's a whole the first half is talking about things like how to build a syllabus, and if your students are absent and have these bogus reasons for being absent, what's considered passable and not passable, and all those kind of things, grading and SEOs and things like that. And then the second half was being in the classroom, so at community college, shadowing a professor in your specific field, and then you get to teach alongside with them. So it was kind of like a cool buffer in between actually having to have a classroom of my own. And I just believe in that for whatever field, is having some kind of internship or some kind of like practice before it's all on you. So those are the steps I took. And then after that, just applying.
Okay, well said. All right, everyone clap it up for Miss Niketa Calame. Okay, we know you have a fruitful schedule here, and we really appreciate your time. But if you could share with us some words of wisdom, some inspiration to build intrinsic motivation. This class, once again, is the multicultural perspective within theater class, and we appreciate your time. And what words of wisdom do you want to share before we part ways?
Well, I would say that, our future leaders is basically who you are and who we are. As we see this climate of craziness and decisiveness, it's up to us to use art and to use theater and to use documentaries and to use any kind of form that's going to touch the masses to kind of redirect the story that we are saying here in America, and that love does exist, and humanity does exist, and inclusiveness does exist, and we can drown out the noise of the other rhetoric that's going on through art.
Okay, well said. Clap it up, clap it up, clap it up. Rhonda and I will be in LA soon.
Oh, yay!
To break bread with you and Donovan and having a great time here. It's always a blessing to spend time with you and your husband and fellowship with you. Thank you, wholeheartedly.
Yes.
All right, have a blessed day. Take care.
Okay, you guys have a good day. Bye.